As well as recognizing differences along social lines without losing sight of feminist ideals of sisterhood, social justice, and freedom from oppression. Writing this reflective piece has given me the space to examine the complexities and contradictions of my reality as an African Caribbean woman living in Britain. Age 9. In the yard was Grandma standing by a tree, and I don't know how Kathy Ann got there because it was unusual for Kathy Ann to be visiting me, but she was there, her hair brushed and smoothed into 4 plaits, each ending with a starched cotton ribbon that matched her cotton crisp dress that rustled when she moved. Her white ankle socks and black shiny patent strap shoes finishing off her demure posture. My sister was bright, neat, polite, and well behaved, and light. I was wearing a crumpled version of the dress my sister wore, and my hair was in 4 big doo-doo plaits. Despite Grandma hitting me on the head with the comb, I hadn't sat still, so the parts were crooked and my plaits didn't end with ribbons. I didn't care and giggled as I felt the cool sea breeze on my skin. I felt the pull of the coves calling me and the warm earth on the sole of my feet. I didn't like shoes, they bound my feet and slowed me down, but I was always in a hurry. Grandma broke into my thoughts. Your mother and father have sent for you all to go and see them in England. My feelings for Mummy and Daddy was always filled with excitement because they sent barrels home full of things from England. Now we were being told we were going to see our parents in England. I couldn't contain myself. Kathy Ann being older than me and having a better understanding of the ways of big people. And she had even heard stories of people who had gone to England saying they're coming back and had never returned. She had her reservations and asked questions. How long are we going for? And we coming back? I was pleading with her that it would be fun, and of course we would be coming back. Grandma lied. Yes, it's only a holiday. You'll be coming back soon. 47 years later, I was taken by surprise. There she was, a quick glimpse of familiarity. I searched for some recognition that she hadn't seen me. The noise of the department store canteen seemed to have heightened, and everything was now vivid. Everyone seems to be moving so much slower. I was conscious suddenly of who I was in that moment. I did not move. I finished my meeting, speaking and moving slowly so as not to draw any attention to myself. Now on my own, I deliberately watched this fragile elderly woman in her light beige coat, a bright red scarf protecting and supporting her neck, and a beret pulled down low, covering fine grey hair. She was now standing right in front of me. She looked slightly dishevelled and unsteady on her feet, but supported by a walking stick. Her fear had finally materialized. She was now vulnerable and needed the walking stick her son had bought for her, following her numerous stumbles and finally a fall. She looked over her spectacle, peering at the notice board, trying to decide what to have. Her back turned to me. I knew now would be the time for me to get away unnoticed, make a break for it. Instead, I find myself frozen, like a rabbit caught in the headlights, standing dutifully next to her side, whispering, "Hello, Mother." Within seconds of her greeting me, her eyes having given her emotions away that she was pleased to see me, she casually hands me her tray and we proceed to the cashier. She offers to buy me anything I like. I decline for fear of later feeling obligated. In this relationship, everything has a price and nothing comes free. I'm aware that I'm relegated to the customary role of pleasing her, in this instance being the good daughter. As I sat with her listening to the familiar monologues of her poor health and hospital appointments, I find myself retreating and sleeping into the now familiar distractions of examining her from head to toe, looking for any similarities between us. I search her face that is now marked by acne. My mother had shared that her face had been blemish-free, and photographs of her as a young woman prior to birth shows her loss, as they reveal a former acne-free, beautiful toffee complexion and glossy, straight, jet black hair flowing down to her waist, testifying that, as my mother claims, migrating from Grenada to England had taken its toll on her physically, and I would add psychologically. To my eyes, her face is now etched with the markings of anxiety and ravaged with pain. I look at her hands and they are petite, and I can see I share the same delicate fingers that always seem to separate me from other Caribbean girls who teased me. Your fingers are creepy, so bony. I swallow hard as I'm jolted back by the lighter tone of her voice. She has moved from talking about her ailments to the extra burdens of returning to the Caribbean, and how the British government is exploiting those Commonwealth citizens who have paid taxes and national insurance for decades. Recently, on my parents' retirement, they returned to their country of birth. They are only paid in local currency, saving the British government billions as they exploit, once again, this group, keeping the real value of what was paid by these people. I watch my mother physically ache as she moaned how she and others like her are so excluded from using the National Health Service. Despite having made decades of contributions, There Is No Black in the Union Jack by Paul Gilroy still resonates as the discrimination continues. So having lived in Britain, endured great hardships, discrimination and exploitation, and at great sacrifice, invested our savings and finally returned home to Grenada, we now find ourselves as pensioners in the Caribbean, poverty-stricken as the city's 2008 crash has defrauded all the West Indian islands, banks, money unions and insurance companies. So we are still waiting 8 years on to see if our savings will be returned. As my mother, revealing her contempt for those in power, I am reminded of my mother's capacity to put forward a well-informed argument, and that she was still a force to be reckoned with. She, an African Caribbean woman, had worked in 10 Downing Street as a PA in the 1970s and had witnessed racial discrimination and sexual discrimination in the cutthroat world of politics firsthand. She had been part of writing speeches that moved people. She had been a Labour Party supporter, and as a voter, we knew that at the time the Labour Party was just as racist as the Conservative Party. However, we aligned ourselves with working class. Although we knew many were prejudiced, we knew and acknowledged that not all white people were prejudiced. However, my mother now believed all parties are the same, self-serving. Moving on seamlessly, she was now sharing how frustrating it is being 76 and winced out slowly. I'm old, and this heart condition is painful. Having heard over decades as a girl, young adult, and now a mature woman, these fear-inducing stories of her different ailments, and feeling helpless at such times, at not being able to help her, now sick of the gloomy stories and the helplessness it evoked in me, I interjected into her monologue that I can see that she is really not well because she looks awful. I take some relish in saying this, and I resist adding about bloody time. I've had to listen to this for decades. Finally, I think to myself, she looks and is the real deal. At this thought, shame and guilt tries to engulf me, but I shake it off. She looks at me slightly uncomfortably. As I had touched her vanity, I had thought to myself, you are now every bit the ugly baby. I know I'm off script and that it was an unkind thing to say, but I needed something like a slap to bring me round, and I wanted and needed to regroup myself, as I was aware I had been losing ground as I was forced into the role of being the reassuring daughter, telling her she will soon be feeling better after her hospital appointments, and how glad I am that my brother is now able to support both my parents by now living in Grenada with them. The guilt and shame I felt like a warm flush wanted to surface, and I shifted uncomfortably in my seat as I imagined myself joining in with my mother and community condemnation of me. That I was a good-for-nothing daughter. What kind of daughter was I that I didn't love my mother or want to take care of her after all she had done for me? My mother eventually asked how the family was, and as we say our goodbyes, she inquires about my practice, saying she hopes it's going well. I nod. I am rendered speechless, the shame and helplessness I feel. I have become familiar over the years with the sinking, hollowed out feeling I experienced after being with my mother. A sense of not existing, a numbing, a sense of void. As we separate, I reach out as I'm the one who habitually gives her a kiss on her cheek, which she half-heartedly pushes towards me. Kissing her face, we part, and burdened with a sense of responsibility, despite myself and out of duty. I mumble some remark about us meeting up again soon. As I walk away, I turn around to see her staring at me. I'm sure I caught a look of sadness in her eyes. I retreat into myself, questioning, am I just projecting my own grief onto her? I am suddenly drained, and I'm feeling every day of my 50 years. As I walk, I now notice the extra weight I'm carrying as my breast pushes against my chest bone. Conscious of my body, I straighten my posture. Like my mother, I feel all done in. Now on my own, surrounded by the hustling and bustling of shoppers, I want to scream and cry as the numbness turns to despair. I force myself steady, questioning the validity of my feelings. Whose feelings are these? I know I have to bear the pain of the disappointment that despite how many years we meet, my mother remains an unknowable, a stranger whose love I never won. Those feelings of grief and loss I own. I take a long, deep breath. As I pull myself together, soothing myself, I repeat silently to myself, at least I don't hate her anymore. At least I don't hate her. Thank God I don't hate her. As I wipe the tears from my eyes, I know these tears of abandonment, loss, and separation are for the both of us.